The empty hands of Elijah. Elijah Carter had not always been a man of closed fists, but life has a way of teaching people to grip tightly, to hold on to what little remains when everything else has slipped away. He was 43 years old, living in a small rented apartment on the edge of a quiet town in rural Tennessee. The walls were thin, the heating unreliable, and the refrigerator hummed a broken tune every night. He had lost his job at the lumber mill 8 months ago. His wife, Sandra, had left 2 years before that. Not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. Their son Marcus was 17 and lived with Sandra across town. Elijah saw him on weekends sometimes. Every morning, Elijah would sit at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and stare at his hands. They were rough hands, working hands. Hands that had built furniture, carried timber, repaired engines, but lately they had been doing nothing. They rested on the table like two broken tools, useful once, forgotten now. He had stopped going to church 3 years ago, not because he stopped believing in God exactly, more because he could not understand why God had stopped believing in him. The morning, everything changed. It was a Tuesday in late autumn when Elijah woke earlier than usual. The sky outside was still dark, that deep velvet blue that exists only in the hour before dawn. He couldn't explain why he woke. There was no alarm, no noise, no reason. He simply opened his eyes and felt, strangely, that he was supposed to be awake. He made his coffee. He sat at the table. And then, for the first time in years, he opened his hands, not dramatically, not with any great intention. He simply laid them flat on the table, palms facing upward, and looked at them. It was such a small gesture, but something about it felt different. It felt like surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of exhaustion. The kind where you finally stop fighting and simply say, I cannot carry this alone anymore. He didn't pray in words. He didn't know what words to use. He just sat there, hands open, and let the silence fill the room. Marcus and the phone call. Later that morning, his phone rang. It was Marcus. Dad, his son said, and there was something uncertain in his voice. Can I come over today? I know it's not the weekend, but I just wanted to see you. Elijah said yes immediately. Marcus arrived at noon, wearing a hoodie too thin for the cold, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He sat across from his father at the same kitchen table, and for a while they didn't say much. Elijah made sandwiches. They watched an old football game on the small television. Then Marcus said, Are you okay, Dad? Like, actually okay? Elijah looked at his son, this boy with his mother's eyes and his own stubborn jawline, and for the first time in a long time, he told the truth. No, he said, I haven't been okay, but I think I'm starting to figure something out. Marcus nodded slowly. What's that? Elijah thought for a moment. That I've been holding everything so tight that nothing new could come in. Every worry, every mistake, everything I lost, I was carrying all of it in my hands, squeezing it. He paused. I think maybe I need to let go. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My teacher said something like that once. She said faith isn't about having the answers. It's about being willing to not have them. Elijah looked at his son with something close to wonder. When did you get so wise? He asked. Marcus shrugged. I've got a pretty decent dad who taught me to think. The light through the window. That evening, after Marcus left, Elijah sat again at his table. The sun was setting, and a long shaft of golden light came through the kitchen window and fell across his open palms. He stared at it, the way the light gathered there, warm and unhurried. He thought about a passage he had once heard in church years ago. Something about how God's gifts cannot enter a closed fist. That faith required openness. That receiving required letting go of the need to control what was received. He had never fully understood it then. He was beginning to understand it now. It was not about being passive. It was not about giving up on effort or responsibility. It was about releasing the anxiety of outcome, about doing your part, showing up, working hard, being present, and then trusting that the rest was not entirely yours to carry. Elijah had been carrying the weight of everything he could not fix. His marriage, his job, the years he felt he had wasted. He had gripped these failures so tightly that his hands had no room for anything else. No room for new beginnings. No room for unexpected grace. No room for the small, quiet miracles that arrive only when you are open enough to receive them. A new beginning. The next morning, Elijah did something he had not done in years. He walked to the small white church on Maple Street, the one he used to attend with Sandra before everything fell apart. He did not go inside. He simply stood outside for a moment, looking at the old wooden doors, the simple cross above them, the cracked stone steps. Then he went inside. The church was empty that morning, a Wednesday. No service scheduled, but the doors were unlocked as they always had been. He sat in the third pew from the back, where he used to sit. The light came through the stained glass and painted colors on the floor. He opened his hands in his lap. He didn't ask for his old job back. He didn't ask for his marriage to be restored. He didn't bargain or demand or explain himself to God the way he once might have. He simply sat in the quiet and said, in his heart, if not in words, Here I am. I'm open now. Whatever you have for me, I'm ready to receive it. It was the most honest prayer he had ever prayed. What faith actually looks like. Faith, Elijah came to understand in the weeks that followed, does not look the way you imagine it will. It did not arrive as a thunderclap or a vision or a sudden restoration of everything he had lost. It arrived quietly, in ordinary moments. In a phone call from an old friend who had heard he was looking for work and knew someone hiring. In an afternoon spent helping Marcus with a school project and realizing he still had something to offer. In a neighbor who knocked on his door to ask if he could help repair her fence. Just a small job, but it got him moving again. In a morning when he woke up and for no particular reason, felt something that might have been hope. None of these things were dramatic. None of them were miraculous in the way people expect miracles to look, but each one arrived because Elijah had finally stopped clenching. He had made room. He had opened his hands. The message. There is a reason the image of open hands is so powerful across so many traditions and beliefs. It is the universal posture of receiving, of trust, of vulnerability chosen freely. A closed fist says, I will hold what I have because I am afraid. An open hand says, I trust that what I need will come. This does not mean being careless or passive. Elijah still sent out job applications. He still called Marcus. He still showed up to that church on Wednesday mornings and sat in the third pew. Effort matters. Action matters. But effort without openness is just fear wearing productivity as a costume. God, or life, or the universe, or whatever name you give to that force greater than yourself, cannot pour blessings into a clenched fist. The receiving requires the opening. Epilogue. 1 year later, 1 year after that quiet Tuesday morning, Elijah sat at the same kitchen table, but the apartment felt different now. He had painted the walls. There were plants on the windowsill. A new job, not at a lumber mill, but at a community center, teaching woodworking to teenagers, had given his days a shape and a purpose he hadn't expected. Marcus visited more often now, not just on weekends. Elijah still had struggles. Life had not become perfect. There were still mornings of doubt, evenings of loneliness, moments when the old fear crept back in and tried to close his hands again. But he had learned something he could not unlearn. He laid his hands on the table, palms up, and let the morning light fall on them. Open, ready, faithful. Open your hands with faith, not because you know what will be placed in them, but because you trust the one who places it.